Hello and welcome to another edition of Football Express. It's a special edition today. In the studio today is Gerard Lawlor, the Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Football League. Great to have you on board. I'm delighted to have you here, Gerard. I want to have a general discussion with you about your background, what brought you into football, and you're now the top man in NIFL. And just want to talk football.
No better subject, Stephen.
Great. Tell us about you, Gerard. What brought you into football? I know everybody loves football, but tell us what drew you into the game.
My background's pretty simple, I suppose, in that, I left school. So grew up in North Belfast, went to Barnagea in the day as it was. Always remember bunking off a few times. I remember at Solitude there was Irish Cup games, maybe 2:30, or Irish Cup replays that before the days of floodlights, so the whole school maybe disappeared to Solitude. So I remember going to Solitude early in those early teens. And then I left school and I was working at the time and I started my first job and I was a chef. I was trained to be a chef, obviously. And one of the guys I worked with was a member of a supporters club. So I started going out on a Saturday with him to meet up for a few beers, as you do. And it just sort of snowballed from there. Started going to Cliftonville matches every week, and it was a social thing. A few beers, go to the game, home. They were a West Belfast club, the Spirit of 79. And they sort of got involved in a supporters club, started to get more interested in the football club. And then I became the treasurer of the supporters club, the chairman of the supporters club. Started then getting involved in the club, became a member of the football club. So that sort of was the natural journey from the, little that I know, sort of 35 years later or 30 years later, I would be the chief executive of the league. I probably always wanted to be involved, or, I wanted to always make a difference. It's easy to sit in the side and moan, but I've always tried. And I suppose then, way back, there was a change in the Cliftonville board. Before that, I did work at the club as a community relations officer. So I give up a lot of time in trying to build communities. I always hated the way Cliftonville was portrayed. And the club at the time maybe wasn't overreacting with the community. So I wanted to get involved in that. And I did work there with Michael Boyd when he was the IFA. And then became a board member at Cliftonville. And all this happened naturally. There was never a plan like it. So it all just happened naturally, and I was in the right place at the right time. And then the time I was in the wrong place at the wrong time was probably Cliftonville were looking at chairman. And I was sort of probably the one with the big mouth in the room who constantly gave off. And somebody says, well, why did you do it? And I did it for a while. I did it for a couple of months. I wasn't expected that the vacancy was going to come. And I was still fairly young. I was only 34, 35 years of age. No idea what I was getting into. And look, we all have egos. Let's be straight about that. We have egos and we want to, I thought it'd be brilliant to be the chairman of Cliftonville. And while I'll say Cliftonville has probably given me some of my hardest, challenging days of my life, Cliftonville obviously gave me memories and experiences that money couldn't buy. So there was always that journey, Stephen. And throughout football, obviously, when I was involved with Cliftonville, I became involved in NIFL, in the Irish FA. I then went on to be an Irish FA board member. League football, and I often say this to people, you have two roads in football. You're either an association person or you're a league person. I would say I was always a league person because I think it's more hard-working, bread and butter. I come from North Belfast. I'm very proud. I haven't got anything handed to me. I've worked hard. I've been dedicated. I've been committed to the job. I love all our clubs. I want to see them do well. Yeah, look, Cliftonville's my club. There's no doubt about that. And as I say, when I took over Cliftonville originally, nobody really knew the state of the club, what the finances of the club were. I don't have money. And I think it was a stage we brought everybody together and the club was probably well over £1 million in debt. And then you're going, shit, what do you do here? I've been there and I've written credit card checks in the day to pay bills to keep the club going. I don't think it's overly a massive secret that I remortgaged my house at one stage to put money in, along with others, not just me, but there was a few of us. So there were some very dark days at Cliftonville. And I suppose the good story for me is, look, I took over a club that I love. It was in massive debt. I left it 12, 13 years later. It didn't have any debt, and we'd won numerous trophies and 2 league titles. So when you look back, it was a wonderful time.
Well, that's a fairly comprehensive review, but I'm going to fire a couple of things at you. Right? Did you play football? Why Cliftonville? Was it because of the Spirit 79 club? And what was the team, or who were the players, or who was the manager that kind of inspired you?
I suppose Cliftonville was the obvious one. Let's be honest. I grew up in the 80s and 90s in North Belfast. So Cliftonville was the local team. Grandparents lived across the waterworks, and you would have always heard on the Cave Hill Road, you'd heard the roar coming up on a Saturday afternoon. I remember in earlier life going, and I always have this memory of growing up, and I remember from my first communion, my mum taking me, and it used to be Lifestyle at the top of Primark, and mum taking me into Lifestyle to buy a Cliftonville kit. And obviously you didn't get Cliftonville kits, and she knew no different. So there was something obviously in my life in the Cliftonville days, and I ended up in a Man United kit because it was the right colour. So probably went into a Manchester United phase and then back into Cliftonville. But yeah, look, it was the Spirit of 79. Cliftonville was, look, let's be honest, as a boy, as a Catholic growing up in North Belfast, some people go on a completely different journey and get lost. Cliftonville was the choice, and just for me, I just loved it, and I say there was always a challenge, there was always something going on at it, and just fell in love with the place.
Did you kick a ball yourself?
Very badly. I think I was always the goalkeeper at school. I don't know if it was because I was the heaviest or I was just rubbish, but I went through a bit of goalkeeping sort of stuff, but at 5'6" was never going to happen, but nothing ever serious.
Thanks, Gerard. Well, tell me, and again, we're sort of poking and prodding you a wee bit, the Spirit of 79, am I right in thinking that you were a vocal member of the Spirit of 79? I wouldn't say necessarily a rabble-rouser, but somebody said to me, like, torches and pitchforks at the castle walls.
Well, yeah, because I think as supporters, Cliftonville, we had issues how the club was being ran, and I think a number of clubs. So look, I was one of a number of people that was particularly unhappy of where the club was going, what was the future of the club. So I suppose in a way I put my money where my mouth is. But yeah, we would have looked for change as a young rebel rouser. Yeah, I think I've never been known for being quiet. If I have an opinion, I like to share it. To my detriment most of the time, I have to say. But look, I'm a great believer. If you've something there, put it out on the table. Let's discuss it. Let's see what happens. So yeah, look, there was an overthrow. I wouldn't have been the ringleader, but I would have been involved. And Cliftonville changed for the much better. I think, look, we all know how our clubs was ran. Stephen, Crusaders probably no different. Of people would have come in at 2:45, they left at 4:45 every fortnight. Where was our clubs going? Like Linfield and Glentoran were dominating local football in those days. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd have been a rebel rouser because I wanted better things. I wanted to see trophies. I wanted my club to win. So yeah, I can't deny the rebel rousing part probably.
Well, let's drill into it a wee bit. Tell us about your time at Cliftonville. I want to ask you, I have it down here, great success under the late and much lamented Tommy Breslin. So that's all the good stuff, and you're up front and central. And I remember we had a wager for a bottle of champagne for the League Cup, which you won 4 times in a row, cost me a few quid.
Still have it, I've never drank it, to be happy to know.
You still have your communion money as well, don't you? But tell us about that glorious era with Cliftonville, because it was a lot of hard work in the background to actually get to the stage where Cliftonville were league champions twice in a row.
Yeah, look, it was a phenomenal time. It was, and you don't appreciate these things at the time, if I'm honest with you. And I look back now on it, and look, there was a lot of hard times before that. There was a lot of sleepless nights. And I think sort of where I succeeded, I say when I took over, there was a lot of debt. There was problems with the McAleary stand as it is now. There was builders owed money. I'll never forget one day I had to go and these builders weren't overly happy. Mm. Here's a wee lad from Unity Flats walking in, and I'm saying, and they're like we'll shut your club down, we'll close it out. And I remember saying to this guy one day, I don't know where it'll happen from, but I tell you, I'll have you your money within 2 years. And I just wanted out of the room because I thought I was going to get lumped. And I remember I got out of the room and I was like, yeah, we're in trouble. And look, part of it, I became lucky in a couple of occasions. I'll be honest, Rory Donnelly at the time going to Swansea City was a massive windfall. I heard a stat lately and I meant to get it back, but I think we'd qualified for Europe 8 out of the 13 seasons that I was involved. That the club was never, so we started to bring in some European money. And I think if anything I'd say with creditors, we were honest. We faced them. We sort of never let anybody down. There's times, as I say, I was run about with credit card checks and 3 credit cards, and other people, not just me, a number of people around the club were doing the exact same things to try and keep it afloat. And we just chipped away, and we got to Europe on a couple of occasions and we were able to do things. And Rory Donnelly going to Swansea was a big piece of the cake. And we cleared all the short-term debtors. We got through it, and then obviously winning the league, drawing Celtic. So there was windfalls that were never business. So I'll say there was a bit of luck in those, but I'm a believer as well. You make your own luck. Drawing Celtic in the Champions League was an unforgettable experience.
Pick some highlights from that glorious year and tell us what you remember of Tommy, because he was probably the nicest man in football.
Brezzy was, I don't think there's anything that hasn't been said about Brezzy. He was just a wonderful guy, and I mean, me and him had became close friends as opposed to a working relationship as well. But he just had the mayor's touch of just, he knew what to say, he knew the right time to say it. And look, Tommy took a lot of convincing. I always remember at the time, I think Eddie Patterson and the club had sort of part of company, which, look, I suppose with hindsight, if we were all doing things nowadays, we would do them differently. But we do things that we think's the right time, and under pressure on a lot of occasions. But, Eddie had gone, and I remember saying to Tommy that night, I need your help, and rang him the next morning, tried to ring him for about 2 hours and couldn't get him.
Did he not want it? No?
No, not, well, first of all, the 2 hours I couldn't get him. Then when I did get him, and I'm like, what the fuck were you? And he was like, Conor Downey was on the phone to me for 2 hours. And I said, look, and he's like, look, this isn't for me, I'm not. And I said, look, come here. And I always remember we had a Setanta Cup game on the Monday night against Dundalk. I'm nearly sure it was. And I said, look, Brezzy, I'm here. It's done now. I've done what I've done. Would you take the team on Monday night at least, and let's see where we go to? And he says, I'll do Monday night. And I says, who do you need? And he says, I'll bring a Minto. Now, I didn't know Peter Murray at this stage. I'd heard of him. And I always remember that Sunday afternoon, the team trained. He says, get them Solitude, 3 o'clock in the morning. Monday night happened, and I goes in the Monday night, and I'm saying, well, there's training tomorrow night, Brezzy, what's happening tomorrow night? And he's like, right, I'll do it at the end of the season, but that's sort of it, I'm done. And I says, all right. And for the rest history, he got the bug, things, he's seen the potential. Look, I know there's players that, and we were all very, very close, and I remember people coming to me afterwards, like Mark Holland, and that was one that sticks. Kieran O'Connor's another who, they went to meet Brezzy. Brezzy released them, but they left the room feeling $1 million, and then sort of getting them going, oh, I've just been sacked. He had that ability. Yeah,
such an easy way about it.
Just an easy way where I would love to have that. But Brezzy was just so, he was laid back, but he wasn't in a way. And he just got on with life. He didn't do pressure to a certain degree. Saying pressures for tires, and he just brought the boys on a journey, and we added a few, and he got the best out of an amazing group of players at that stage, and the first year of the league title, I remember being in Geneva and fighting with Mark Smith over a fiver on the phone in the centre of Geneva.
Not like you.
Over a contract, and we fought over the fiver. Conor Devlin Conor Devlin had come back, was amazing. We signed Jimmy McGovern, and I remember at the time, look, because of the history of Northern Ireland, Cliftonville always had an issue with Protestants and trying to sign people, and the team was very Catholic dominated. It was something all I was wary of and I was concerned about. And I always remember the Glens had let Jamie McGovern go, and I said to Bressie, look, there's somebody. Basically we were looking to sign anybody who was abroad would have got signed at that stage, because we just needed to change the perception of the club. Northern Ireland was changing. And I remember Bressie saying, right, I'm going to meet, he rang me and says, I'm going to meet him, right. He played for the Glens and he was from Larne. So we automatically assumed Jamie McGovern was abroad. So Bressie goes to meet him. So I'll never forget the night Bressie rang me. I knew he was meeting him 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, Bressie rings me and I'm going, right, how'd it go? And he went, you're not going to believe this. And I says, what? And he says, he's not abroad. And I'm saying, sorry, what? He says, I pull into one street in Larne, there's tricklers, and I didn't know there was any. So, you know, things like that Bressie had, and Jamie came and was outstanding. You know, Jamie and Mark Smith that year, Georgie was outstanding. How it happened on the final day was just incredible.
Pick a couple of matches for me, Gerard, from that era.
Look, it's got to be, there's a couple. The first year, there was a game at Dungannon that was really going to the edge. And I think we'd battered them for so long, and Stevie Garrett scored with about 5 minutes to go. Because he just kept it going. Is it, can it, will we? There was a game against, I always remember there was a Glentoran game at Solitude that was tough. And the George McMullen day was just, I remember when the penalty went in, the final whistle, and I'm crying like a baby. And Tim McGarry saying, who writes these scripts? You know, and it was just every, you know, for George McMullen to be such a red, to score that goal in front of the old cage at Solitude, you wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And it was just unbelievable. And I say there were such a group of lads who, Kieran Codwell, Stevie Garrett, Joe Gormley, Liam Boyce, Jante Catney, the two Skinnells, Eamon Sadak, they were just amazing people. And look, I'm friendly with most of them still to this day. So Bressie had transformed the whole place. And then they went, obviously, well, we won the title the first year. And then we were, the trip to Santa Ponsa was good. And then we did the Champions League draw. And I'll always remember John Rogan and I, because the board used to take it in turns, and we went to UEFA. And the dream was to play Celtic. And I always remember it, that because on the day you get pots. So there's 4 pots at this stage. So the first phone call that morning from back home was, right, we're in the same pot as Celtic. There was 10 home, 10 seated and 10 unseated. So goes, one plays 5 and it's the same across 4 pots. So we got into the draw, sweating, anxiety, what do we do? And first 2 teams come out. None of us. Second 2 teams, third, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I got to the stage, and I'll never forget, there was Celtic and there was Legia Warsaw in the seated pot, and there was TNS and Cliftonville were the 2 unseated teams in the pot. And I remember, so the first ball that came out then, so the Legia Warsaw ball came out. So there was 2, we had a 1 and 2 chance of drawing Celtic in the Champions League. And I'll never forget that. There was a boy called Giorgio Manchetti, who's the General Secretary of UEFA now. And there was these balls he unscrew, and I tell you, it must have took this boy a half an hour to unscrew this ball to take out, and he pulled out the name TNS, which meant there was only Celtic and us left in the pot. And look, people think me and Rogie went to the supermarket and got a carry out and went back to the hotel room and had a party that afternoon, because it was just. And look, you know, because people get the Irish League and there's rivalry. The one thing that I love about the Irish League, as you know, Steve, behind the scenes, everybody's together. You know, and I remember at that stage, the Linfield people were there, Big Tommy Whiteside was there from the Cruise. Nearly sure it was Portadown that year, it might have been Glentoran, but we all went for dinner, and, you know, dinner was on us, and, you know, the crack was great, and getting tortured, and Sky Sports News was looking at us, and, you know, look, again, and supposed to highlight, I always remember the Solitude game. The Solitude game was horrendous. There was so much planning, organisation. There was a non-Cliftonville crowd there. People were drunk, were falling over each other. It was a lovely day, so people have been on the pitch. And I always remember, if you remember, we put temporary seating down behind the dugouts, and they were doing this jumping up and down, and I'm going for corporate manslaughter, because is that going to hold up? So they were all the thoughts that come into my head. And then we went to, we'd gone to Celtic Park the week later, and places that I've been many a times as a supporter. And we brought people who were good to us and connected. And I'll give you a laugh, and I still have the photo on my phone. We'd Father Gary Donegan from Holy Cross, had come with us. And our good friend John Lenihan came with us. John flew in for the game. And I always remember we were on our way and we were giving out the tickets, and John says, "I've no tie. And you need a shirt and tie to get into the boardroom at Celtic Park." Long story short, he had a black jacket and a black shirt on. Him and Father Gary got this piece of paper, put it up, and made it that he was a priest. So Lenihan went in to Celtic Park that night as a priest, and I still have a photo of him outside Celtic Park.
Absolutely
and
wonderful.
you know, and it was things, and we'd gone in, and I remember just about 5 minutes before kick-off, the Celtic chairman, Ian Bankner, coming to me, and he says, "Come with me and experience this." And I was like, "Where am I going?" And he took me down the tunnel of Celtic Park onto the touchline about 5 minutes before kick-off. And he says, "Experience the atmosphere." And it would have made the hairs in the back of your neck. I mean, there was 38,000 in Celtic Park that night. And I suppose people always ask you throughout your life, why do you do it? That's why it was for moments like that to experience. And that's when I talk about, I've had experiences through football that people couldn't buy and money can't buy. And that's why I love the local game. I have a real passion for it. I mean, we have some wonderful people at our clubs. Yes, we're like a big family. We fight, we fall out at times. But I think when the times get tough and somebody needs help, there's always someone from an Irish League club there. So, yeah, as a young boy growing up, I suppose I fulfilled my dreams. Rather than ever playing and scoring the winner somewhere, I fulfilled my boyhood dreams. But I put a lot into it, and I worked very hard to get there.
Yeah, and people don't often see that, Gerard, you know. And the one thing I must be borne in mind is we're all in this because we love football. We love the game of football. I'm going to move you on a wee bit. You've been very good in telling us about your growing up and your time at Cliftonville. So we've done that then. You went to the IFA for a period. Now I have a ream of things that I want to get into further down, but what sort of experience was that on the Irish FA board? Did it give you a good grounding for the NIFL job? Yes and no, in a way. So I suppose when I went into the Irish FA, and in those days football was slightly different, because when I arrived as the Cliftonville representative, and I always remember my friend Stephen Bell, as you know, Stephen and I arrived at the same time. I remember the same night was our first meeting, and you go in and there was an old guard there of Adrian Tier, Morton McKnight, God rest them, people like that. They were like, "You're going to that committee and you're doing that, and he's going to say that, and you have to second that." That the business was done in a way outside the room. And suppose I came from that old guard. I was, you know, a young boy in that old guard. So when I went to the Irish FA, I went as the person from senior football. As you know, in those days, nobody from senior football got near the IFA board. There was a particular situation where we seen an opportunity. The Premier League Management Committees, they were nominated me to go for that position. And I was there to defend football. So I always had to be, I was a rebel rouser there to a certain degree, where the senior game wasn't getting reflected in the way it should. It wasn't getting respect that it should have got in those days. So I was in a minority in a room amongst juniors and intermediates, that I was a rebel rouser for the senior game, because that's what I was there to represent. So it got me into, I suppose, in a way, the inner circles. And look, and I say this also as
similar from bosses and managers. Every experience has something in it to learn. Even if it is, here's a way I wouldn't do something, it's still a learning experience. So the IFA, I got on with everybody. If I was running it, I would have done things particularly very different. I don't think I wasn't part of the inner circle. I wasn't part of the establishment. I suppose I was there to challenge the establishment for the good of the senior game, and that probably made me unpopular with some elements of the game, but that's okay because I was there to represent the people who sent me. So I think we made inwards, but yeah, so there was experiences in the learning and the relationships that I've been able to reflect on and say, no, we would do differently and I would like to do this differently in the future. So did it set me up? There was learnings in it that helped me for what was to come later in life, and that I never thought was ever going to happen. I mean, I was a chef for 17 years, left there, and I went into the Grand Opera House in a catering role. And probably as it sort of came together and I was progressing through football and learning skills and maturing and growing up, and worked my way through the Opera House, and then the NIFL job became available just over 3.5 years ago. And look, it was some of our clubs actually. Now I'm not going to lie and say that is my dream job, but some of our clubs sort of had rang me and were like, I think you'd be all right at that, and lobbied, and the recruitment agency rang me, they asked to meet me, and I actually went for the first interview. And at the end of the interview I said to the girl, look, and it was an external recruitment company, this isn't for me, look, I'm sorry, I did say I would come and talk to you today, I've come, but it would mean me giving up an awful lot, and I don't think I'm ready for it, and look, I don't think I'm going to pursue any more. And she was like, look, just bear with us, would you just stay in there and let's see what happens. And she rang me back a few weeks and said, look, would you come back for another chat? So I must have spun her some good yarns, and I went back, and the rest is history, as they say.